Hi guys, this is Dr. Sadasivam once again with you, and we're going to discuss some of the current topics, guys. And in this small video, we will be talking about the Vietnam policy as outlined by our Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, and second, we will be talking about a fear of a third world war. Is that likely? We will try to dissect some of the recent instances in Ukraine and Russia, and then we will debate about that, and then we will talk about Russia's warning to the United States, and then also the fact that Russia might be defaulting on some of the important dollar payments. We will also be discussing about something that is going to impact our country with respect to delays in the delivery of S-400 Squadron. We have already talked about that in the earlier videos, guys. This is going to be a very short video. We will not be explaining everything in detail, but I guarantee you this will be a 10-15 minutes presentation every day, and if you can spend around 10-15 minutes on a daily basis to this video series, you will come to speed with most of the international and the events of national importance, right? We will also be talking about a very important aspect of CAATSA, which is countering America's adversaries through sanctions. We always talk about sanctions, and we will be talking about that, and then of course Egypt's request to India to supply wheat. A lot of indigenization is happening in the Indian Navy. We will touch upon French elections, and then we will also be talking about Sri Lankan crisis. I will try to restrict this video, complete this video in the next 5 or 7 minutes, and those of you who would like to know more on these topics, there will be separate videos which will be long videos if somebody is interested. Now first, the international policy, a very important topic which is always asked in competitive examinations, especially the civil services examination. It's very important. It might not come as one single question, but in a much larger question, if you can substantiate these events with specific data, names of people, etc., that will be an added advantage for the IAS aspirants, right? Please remember, when we talk about Vietnam, we need to understand that it's the 50th anniversary of establishment of diplomatic ties between India and Vietnam. Very important. Our Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, had met up with their General Secretary, and his name is Phu Trong. Don't go by my pronunciation, but Phu Trong is the General Secretary of the Communist Party. Of course, a lot of things were discussed, including look east policy of India that we have always been talking about, your Indo-Pacific vision, etc. And of course, when head of states meet, they will definitely discuss about Ukraine situation, South China Sea, because South China Sea is very crucial as far as the Vietnam is concerned. Now the next question is about possibility of a World War III. People, they can talk anything, nobody can stop anyone from talking anything, but looking at the manner in which this war is unfolding between Russia and Ukraine, obviously one cannot discount that completely as something which is impossible, right? So we will talk about it, and some of the recent events, they have a ship called as Moskva. Moskva is the name of the ship, very important. It was sunk recently, and this ship is considered to be the flagship of the Russian Navy, especially in the Baltic Sea. And the sinking of the ship is going to be a very disastrous event, and it has been the pride ship in that particular region, and America, Russians will not take it very easily. Now there are two views. Some people say that it was attacked by Ukrainians. Of course, they claim that they hit it with their own missiles. Please remember, the name of that missile is Neptune, whereas Russians have other things to say. They said some kind of a fire happened, etc. So now one thing important is Russia has been warning the United States that they've started sending a lot of arms to Ukraine, and they've already started warning both through formal as well as informal channels. Please understand that. And of course, a lot of such things like expelling some of the diplomats in the other countries, expelling Russian diplomats. These things keep happening in these kind of situations. Like recently, they have expelled around 18 diplomats from the EU. Right now, what's India's stand in it? We need to understand that Rajnath, in one of Rajnath Singh, our defense minister, in one of his conversations, interviews, very clearly said that he does not believe in a zero-sum diplomacy. Please understand it, very, very important. And explain what is zero-sum diplomacy in some other video. Please watch all these videos, right? And of course, we've also already talked about the possible delay of S-400 Squadron to India, might slightly get delayed. I think we've already received one consignment, some of which have already been deployed in the western borders facing Pakistan. Yes, we will talk about it a little later. Now, Russia have already sent warnings to the United States. Now, when you talk about Russia's warnings to the United States, they do it kind of a diplomatic note, and that diplomatic note is called as démarche. Right. It's not sent through normal channels, or those letters are not signed by the president of the country, but informal channels. They send feelers, we call it as feelers, right? Indirect messages saying that it's not done because since US is supplying weapons to them, the war is getting more and more intense, and that is leading to a lot of destruction actually, right? We can keep discussing who is right and who is wrong till cows come back home, but look at the number of killings that is happening on either side. That's what is important. And now one very important development people should know is, in spite of receiving this, US government have made fresh sanctions of approximately $800 million package, right? It was announced by Biden just after receiving this démarche, which includes a lot of things like your large range artilleries, etc., etc. And it is expected, as per the newspaper reports, that these arms will be deployed in the open areas of Donbass. Remember Donbass, Mariupol. There's another video where you can look at all these locations. I've clearly explained all that, right? Okay, all that is happening now. Russia might default on some of its payments. This very important announcement made by Modi, guys. In fact, Russia wanted to service these obligations through bonds, to service dollar bonds through rubles. But they have said that it's a default. It is a default because there are no provisions to pay in any other currency other than dollars. That's how the system has been made, and that's how people are following that system, right? And once if this happens, guys, please remember, this will be Russia's first major default in foreign bonds since 1917. Remember Bolshevik Revolution, right? But of course, there are some provisions, some Russian euro bonds which were issued before 2018, such as those maturing. All that, we will not get into those details. But if this default happens, of course, Russia would not like to make this default because that will be a great stigma in the country's future. But let's see what pans out. But if that happens, as I said, it will be 100 years. The last one, which happened around 105 years back. Now, we talked about the delay of the second S Squadron, very, very important. If you remember, the first squadron, which involved, Triumph missile. Just few things which I learned from, which I studied in the newspaper, and I thought I will share that with you, which is a SAM missile. SAM means surface to air missile. Ideally, it's already in operation in the northeast, right? But for the second lot, some delays are expected. Of course, some simulators, training equipments we've already received, and our soldiers are already undergoing training and they're preparing themselves. But the second operational things are getting delayed. It had come in newspapers. Beautiful story, coming in some thousands and thousands of containers, both through air and the sea routes, etc., etc. And remember, something about this X-400 Squadron is very important. It is part of the $6 billion contract. 6 billion is what? 6 8 of 40, 8 6 of 48, somewhere around 45,000 crore contract we had with Russia in the year 2018. The initial one which came has been deployed in Punjab to take care of our western enemy, that is Pakistan, and of course the other squadrons, appropriate decision will be taken in terms of where to deploy them. And They consist of, what does the squadron contains? Please understand that it has automated mobile systems. They can track, they can destroy hostile strategic bombers, enemies, jets, your enemy's spy planes, missiles, drones, etc. And the range of these is expected to be 380 kilometers, which I saw in an Times of India article. And each of these squadrons will have 2 missile batteries, approximately, each of which have around 128 missiles, guys. And they also will have interceptors with various ranges like 120, 200, 250 kilometers, 390 kilometers, and that's the squadron. And these are military secrets, we can't go too deep into it, and neither information is available, but I've tried my level best to share whatever information was available in the public platform. Now we're going to talk about a very, very important thing, which is CAATSA. Guys, who preparing for competitive government examinations, please understand that. Even for IAS, UPSC, this might be asked. CAATSA is countering America's adversaries through Sanctions Act. Every time we keep talking about America imposing sanctions, etc., etc. That's what is CAATSA. Why are we discussing about that? We're discussing about that because the US Secretary of State, that is Antony Blinken, understand this, even in the earlier videos I've talked about it, US Secretary of State is Antony Blinken. He said that US is yet to make any decision on the sanctions or waiver for India's purchase of S-400, because China had, US had earlier stamped a lot of sanctions on various countries, including your China, including your Turkey, etc., for inducting this S-400 system. We talked about that. This CAATSA was instituted in the year 2017. Please remember that, very, very important. And off late, you also need to know one thing, S-400, we have talked a lot about why we are buying it from Russia. We have talked about India's stand with Russia, but at the same time, please remember that in the last 2 or 3 years, we have increasingly turned to countries like United States, France, Israel, etc. for our defense requirements. Russia has always, been our friend, and they have this feeling that they have helped provide different supplies for the last 60-70 years, and off late we have turned to other countries as well. That's a slight heartburn Russians have. Please bear that in mind. Next, very important, guys, Egypt has turned to India for procuring wheat, right, as its top supplier, right. It's a proud moment for India, guys. They are requesting India to send around 3 million tons of wheat. India has the capacity to export more than 22 millions of wheat at just a 1 week's notice. We have very good stockpile of wheat. That's the way we have planned everything, guys. Okay, now we're going to talk about India's Navy's indigenization. Very, very important. Just some statistics which I saw in the paper I would like to share with you. India approximately has 130 warships and 230 aircraft, which includes your helicopters and drones. Just comparison, China has more than 350 warships and submarines. It's all open information which I saw in Times of India. I don't know what is right and what is wrong, but I'll give you the source of this information. Now the government is on a full-blown cost-cutting exercise, right? Look at it. Most are not aware of what is happening actually. We're talking about Atmanirbhar, we're talking about self-sufficiency, localization, indigenization, etc. One of the greatest thing is, out of the 41 warships, 39 warships are going to be built indigenously. And apart from that, more than 3,400 items, they all are on the process of indigenization. Out of these 3,400, more than 2,400 are machinery and electrical spares, approximately aviation spare parts, your weapons spare parts. All that is happening, and Navy is stepping up its engagement with DRDO, which is the Defense Research and Development organization. And not just that, PRDO cannot cater to all the needs here. We're talking about a big indigenization for an agency, for an institution like Indian Navy. So they will also be roping in a lot of domestic, public, private industries, etc., which of course includes your MSMEs and niche startups. So many startups have also been identified for this. Of course, we cannot rule out Hindustan Aeronauticals because they are coming up with lots and lots of things, including your advanced light helicopter, utility helicopter for its warships, etc., etc. All that will be done. And another MH-60 Romeo multi-mission helicopter, very, very important. Please remember this, because in essay questions, whenever there are questions on this, if you can specify these names like MK-54 torpedoes, for example, or MH-60 Romeo multi-mission helicopters, etc., you will surely have an edge with the other guys because you project yourself as a very knowledgeable person. These are extremely important. And there's another thing which is called as a AON. In this context, whenever we discuss, we should remember AON, which is called as acceptance of necessity. Sometimes certain rules, SOPs are done, but the government makes small deviations considering the security interests of our country depending on the emergency situation. That's called as acceptance of necessity. And of course, we have that for another 47 warship, etc., etc. All that is happening. But remember one very important thing. What has that got to do with the economy of the country is the next question that comes to our mind. Guys, one shipyard job leads to creation of 6 jobs in the ancillary industries. This is what is multiplier. When they build these ships, don't just look at it from a defense and production point of view, Atmanirbhar point of view. How much of employment is that generating, and how much pump priming of the economy is taking place? You need to see that. I will talk about pump priming in a different video. Do go through that. And now, as far as the shipbuilding is concerned, we've done major strides in the last years, in the last decades. We have achieved more than 90% indigenization, guys. And typically when you talk about indigenization in ships, there are 3 things. One is the float. Typically the float consists of your hull and the superstructure. जो ship का जो बाहर की चीज़ है, जो structure है, वो देखते हैं. उस पे 90% indigenization है. तो उसके अलावा क्या क्या है? So big, you have a lot of other things, like you have the move part of it. The move is typically your propulsion part, and then you have the fight part where you have these weapons, sensors, torpedoes, missiles, वो सब उसमें चलते रहते हैं. उस पे देखेंगे, उस पे काफ़ी कुछ indigenization नहीं हुआ है. We've been able to indigenize only till 60% in this. So over a period of time, India is turning from a buyer's navy to a builder's navy. Very, very important. Guys, another very important thing, which is French elections. Emmanuel Macron and Marie Le Pen. Please remember this. These two are the people fighting for the French elections, and things are going on, but generally people are saying Macron is slightly ahead. Now we talked about Sri Lankan crisis. We've already talked about that in a different video, but today let me once again revise that for you. It is a huge political, economical and social crisis. If you remember, there was a presidential election in 2009. Just after that, the government cut taxes by almost 1/3. Right, taxes by 1/3. And so many rating agencies have changed the outlook of Sri Lankan economy from stable to negative, but the government was not bothered at all. Macroeconomic problems, starting from your inflation, exchange rates, unstable macro kind of a situation. And over and above that, the president banned the fertilizers, import of fertilizers, and as a result, their main tea, export crops, plantation crops, grains, rice, all that production came down by 50%. There was a liquidity approach, and a lot of think tanks requested them to approach the International Monetary Funds for it, which they did not do, and a lot of problems. The government is completely in a crisis. Now, guys, we need to understand one thing. We still have people who are crying for 15 lakhs. The government, please give us 15 lakhs. Some misunderstood communication. People say reduce prices of petrol, reduce this, give us freebies. This is the outcome of freebies. When you have these freebies, people don't realize. But when the country gets into a crisis, you will become the laughing stock of the world, guys. Very, very important. Now let's see some of the actions taken by the Sri Lankan government. One or two actions. Let me quickly take that through, because this may be a very important question in competitive examinations. The government, what they did was, the new governor, they have appointed central bank, who is Nandalal Veerasinghe, a very, very prominent person. They have increased, some of the measures they have taken is they have increased the interest rates by some 700, by 70 basis points, something like that. I will clarify that in the next one. And that's it. Other countries are helping them. India has helped them in terms of some dollars. I think $2.4 billion or something. I'm not very sure. And they are also considering invoking of the 21st Amendment, where they will abolish the whole concept of executive presidency once and for all. And I think off now they are focusing on controlling invasion. The country is in turmoil. Right. So these are some of the things. Wanted to keep it in 10-15 minutes, and these are some of the important news snippets, guys. There are a lot of requests for people who want me to do this in Hindi also. I will try wherever possible. I will try to do that in Hindi, and we will have 3 separate playlists in this: Hindi, one for Hindi, one for English. But I would like to do that in Tamil also, which will also be there. Figuring all these things will be coming, and the objective is we should keep ourselves abreast of the information. Right, guys, I hope you like this video, and this is Dr. Sadasivam signing off till we meet again. Bye bye, Jai Hind.